Good morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Good to have you with us. We begin our show this morning with that high-stakes summit between North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Both men met at the Vostochny Cosmodrome, a Russian space center. It is a gathering that could have major implications for the war in Ukraine and for North Korea's satellite program. The leaders toured the Russian space center before sitting down for talks. Kim offered his full support to Russia, while Putin said all issues would be on the table. NBC News foreign correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer joins us now from the South Korean capital, Seoul. So, Janice, this was a summit between two nations that weren't exactly close before. What was that initial meeting like between Kim and Putin, and what did both leaders say in their opening remarks?
Well, both Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un are isolated internationally. Their countries are both considered rogue states, and while they haven't been traditionally diplomatically close, they do find themselves strategically aligned. And so today they met at the Cosmodrome in the Far East region. There were red carpets and honor guards, and presumably this looming possibility of a weapons deal. They said that all issues were on the table. Kim said that he told his host that Moscow had his full backing in what he described as a sacred fight with the West. And Putin told Kim that he was very happy to meet him, and he welcomed him to this new facility.
So, Janice, the location of the meeting was clearly significant at that Russian space center. What more can you tell us about Putin offering to help Kim with North Korea's own satellite program and then the munitions deal for Russia? Is that happening?
Well, Russia needs suppliers to replenish its military supplies for the war in Ukraine. And North Korea has inventory. They have a sizable defense industry. They have full-scale production capabilities. And now it seems they have a buyer. In return, North Korea would get access to Russian know-how, the sort of satellite and nuclear submarine technology that Kim Jong-un has been looking for. Twice in the past several months, including just a couple of weeks ago, North Korea has attempted to launch a satellite, and both attempts have failed. So Kim Jong-un has made this a top priority for his country.
And Janice, we understand North Korea has launched 2 short-range ballistic missiles, the first time ever that's happened while Kim is outside of the country. What's the significance of that?
Well, Kim Jong-un actually hasn't traveled that much out of the country after being in power for some 12 years now. And this was the first since the pandemic, so it has been nearly 4 years. It's seen as a sign that there are better systems in place for levels of delegation within North Korea, and also that the weapons systems and weapons programs are now more refined. And also, Joe, it's just part of the showcase to have so much attention being paid to this particular meeting, and for the missiles to be launched as Kim Jong-un is having lunch with Vladimir Putin, and they're eating beef and drinking Russian wine. It sends a signal that this is a man who's still in control, and that he has the capabilities to launch rockets while not even in the country.
Janice Mackey-Frayer reporting from Seoul, South Korea. Janice, thank you.
Well, turning now to those catastrophic floods in Libya, which have left an unprecedented trail of death and destruction. This morning, a harrowing update from a local minister who says more than 5,000 people have died so far. He says that number could double, with thousands more still missing after being swept away by the waters. A powerful storm caused the floods, which later burst 2 dams and decimated the coastal city of Derna. The UN says tens of thousands of people are now displaced, while foreign countries are scrambling emergency response teams and aid shipments.
To weather closer to home now, Hurricane Lee is making its way across the Atlantic Ocean and getting closer to the U.S. And you can see just how massive this system is here. Lee has remained a major hurricane overnight and is expected to begin weakening, but then grow in size and speed as the day goes on.
Yeah, it's still unclear whether the storm will make landfall in the U.S. No matter what, though, experts warn the effects of Hurricane Lee will be felt along the East Coast through the week. New England is already preparing for tropical storm force winds. coastal flooding, and life-threatening riptides. So let's bring in Angie Lassman for the latest on Lee's track and what you need to know to stay safe. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. I think it might be a little confusing to some folks for me to say that it's going to weaken, but it also is going to grow in size. It's going to speed up. So we've got all those details that kind of helps you navigate exactly what you need to do or maybe not do to prepare. Here's the latest details as far as Hurricane Lee is concerned this morning. Category 3, yes, still remaining a major hurricane with winds at 113 miles per hour and moving northwest at 6 miles per hour. It's going to continue to keep that northerly track here as we go through at least the extended period. But notice what happens as we get into tomorrow. By Friday morning, we're going to see this system just to the west of Bermuda. Folks there already have tropical storm warnings in effect, so they will start to see those impacts from tropical storm conditions here in the short term. Next 24 to 36 hours, we're talking about strong winds and potentially some rain for folks there. In the meantime, we already have issues with the high surf and the rip currents up and down the East Coast. That's not going to change, and that's going to stay with us through the extended period. What hasn't come into full view for us just yet is exactly where the center of that storm will come on shore. We still have places in New England that are close or that are in that cone and or close to that cone, and we of course have parts of Atlantic Canada that we're going to watch for, Nova Scotia, etc. It will weaken. It goes from a category 1, 3 a.m. on Friday and continues to weaken as it enters those cold waters. As it's weakening, though, it's going to grow in size. We're going to see that wind field especially expand, and that could mean a couple different things for some strong winds for certain locations across parts of New England. When we're talking about rain, it looks like the heaviest of the rain is going to be closer to where that center is. Either way, we could see some flooding concerns across parts of Maine. 1 to 3 inches is possible, especially the farther east you go. And even along the coast, we'll see the conditions still with the coastal issues as well as potentially some storm surge. Now, when I'm talking about the storm growing, this is what I mean. Here's Thursday. Tropical storm force winds extend 400 miles in diameter. So just to give you a little perspective, hurricane force winds in Idalia were only 25 miles from the center. So this is a really impressive wind field, and it grows. It gets to 500 miles by the time we get into Saturday. That means that more people impacted by those stronger winds. I'd say that we'll likely see 40 to 60 mile per hour winds for folks along the coast in places like Cape Cod, Nantucket, and parts of Maine. We'll continue to see those conditions. So just something that you'll have to watch for, and the time is going to be Saturday into Sunday.
Indoor weekend.
Indoor weekend for sure.
Exactly. All right.
Wow.
For sure,
All right,
thanks,
Angie Lassman, thanks so much. Well, now let's get to that new drama playing out on Capitol Hill. Speaker Kevin McCarthy announced that he was directing the House Oversight, Judiciary, and Ways and Means Committees to open an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. McCarthy called the inquiry a, quote, logical next step as the GOP-led House seeks bank records and other documents from both Biden as well as his son, Hunter.
House Republicans have uncovered serious and credible allegations into President Biden's conduct. Taken together, these allegations paint a picture of a culture of corruption.
House Republicans have alleged that the president has profited off Hunter's foreign business dealings and lied about it, but have provided no direct evidence to prove those claims. The White House has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing. For more on this, we are joined by NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale. Ali, always wonderful to have you with us. So the House GOP has already been conducting investigations into the president and his son Hunter. So I want you to pack a lot here for us. This is kind of a 3-in-1 question as a warning. What exactly is an impeachment inquiry? What it isn't, but then also what it takes for this inquiry to end in an actual impeachment.
All right, you're going to test my memory for the order of questions this early in the morning, Savannah. But first, an impeachment inquiry basically allows these lawmakers to just go ever so slightly further in their investigatory powers than they've already been able to go. Look, Republicans have the power of the gavel. With the power of the gavel comes the power of subpoenas. They've already been doing the investigating into Hunter Biden and these other threads of the investigation at Oversight, Judiciary, and Ways and Means. So these already are things that are happening. This allows them to go a little bit further in terms of trying to get bank records. That's going to be one of the first things that we end up seeing. What it isn't is an actual all-out impeachment of President Biden. But what it will likely become is that, because right now, what this does for McCarthy is say that he's doing what he calls the next logical step. This is something that he's been under pressure to do. But by doing this, if he doesn't move forward with an impeachment inquiry, he's effectively acquitting Biden. But if he does move forward with it, then he's moving forward with what many in his conference have been pressuring him to do in the first place, which is an actual impeachment. So this is the next step, but this doesn't bring him all the way there. And in my conversations with some Republicans yesterday, this move was supposed to placate people like Matt Gaetz and Ralph Norman, some House Freedom Caucus members. Instead, they're saying this might be a little bit too little too late, or in Matt Gaetz's word, a baby step. They're going to want to see more.
So, Ali, as you mentioned, probably one of the most tangible things here is the fact that the House has this more legal power to look into the Biden family by taking this step. Explain what it is that Republicans think that they might find with that power now and what the reality has been so far of what they've been able to track down.
Yeah, look, the allegations that they're making here against the president is that he illegally profited off of his office when he was vice president of the United States. Some of these claims have already been debunked. For example, the ways in which then Vice President Biden held up aid to Ukraine to get rid of a corrupt prosecutor at the time. That's something that has since been debunked. But what many on the judiciary and oversight committees have been trying to figure out is if there is any link between Hunter Biden's dealings with companies like Burisma and the vice president at the time. They've not been able to come up with that evidence, but they think by taking this next step, being able to dig further into bank records, possibly being able to subpoena people higher up the food chain in the Hunter Biden investigation, they think that could give them the evidence that they need. Right now, though, I think it's important to say they don't have that, and that's probably why they don't have the votes. And so what McCarthy is doing here right now, when we say he doesn't have the votes, is he doesn't have the votes to move forward within his conference on an actual impeachment of the president. This is meant to convince people within his conference that he's A, moving forward in that direction, but B, not moving forward in a way that it jeopardizes his moderate members. So it's a real balancing act, again, of Republicans.
Absolutely. And Ali, let's talk about the other side before I let you go. What are Democrats saying? What's the White House saying?
Yeah. Nothing surprising here. We'll let them speak for themselves. The top Democrats in the Senate and the House sounding like this.
I think it's absurd. The American people want us to do things for them. And here you have a group of Republicans, not all, but too many, who are off the deep end.
Extreme MAGA Republicans have launched an illegitimate impeachment inquiry that is a kangaroo court, fishing expedition, and conspiracy theater rolled into one.
And look, I do think it's important to point out here, Savannah, it's not shocking to hear Democrats come to the defense of the White House and President Biden, but there are even some Republicans who we've heard from both on the House side who are reluctant about this probe going forward, but especially on the Senate side, some Republican senators saying that it feels like the bar for impeachment is just getting lower and lower, as this used to be something that was rare, but now it feels like every Congress we're doing at least one impeachment proceeding.
All right, Ali Vitale, thank you so much.
There are new developments this morning in the search for that escaped prisoner in Pennsylvania. Police say they've recovered a backpack that they think belongs to the convicted murderer as they close in on an area where they believe he is hiding. NBC News correspondent George Solis has the latest.
Good morning. Things as tense as ever in this manhunt for Daniello Cavalcante. Overnight, some pretty interesting developments as law enforcement sources telling our affiliate WCAU that they may have recovered a backpack that the fugitive has been using in his run from the law. The more significant updates, though, come from Monday night when authorities say Cavalcante made his way into the garage of a homeowner here in this 8 to 10 square mile perimeter that they've set up and stole a .22 rifle. It's reported that the homeowner caught him in the act and had a pistol on him and fired shots in Cavalcante's direction. Authorities don't believe he was hurt. They also believe Cavalcante may now be shirtless as they recovered that green or yellow hooded sweatshirt that he was last seen wearing. They also think he may have a pair of work boots now that he stole from a nearby porch, as they found his prison shoes in these wooded areas with some muddy footprints there as well. They know and believe he is growing more desperate. They know that he stole that work van from that dairy farm a few days ago where he ditched it here. They think he might try and steal another vehicle to get out of this area. Authorities know that he is a big threat right now with that rifle, so they are sort of changing their tactics as they approach these woods. But we know there are more than 500 law enforcement officers scouring these woods day and night with drones, dogs, helicopters, anything to try and flush him out. Meanwhile, schools in this area still remain on lockdown. A lot of people feel the situation grows more dire by the day. Many skeptical if he'll ever be caught, but authorities remain confident they'll catch their man. Joe and Savannah.
All right, George, thank you.
For more on this, let's bring in NBC News analyst and retired ATF special agent in charge, Jim Kavanaugh. Jim, thanks as always for being here. So Let's dig into this. The suspect has been able to evade police so far. It looks, though, like police believe, at least, especially with that update we got and what George just explained, that they're trying to box him in and that this may actually be where he is. They say they found this backpack they believe belonged to him. How effective do you think this new perimeter will be in finding him, especially since we know he's slipped through at least one already?
Well, it's going to be tough because when you put a perimeter around, a rural area, even a suburban area, there's so much places to hide in the woods. This guy's very adept. It's his third time as being a fugitive in a rural area. He's proved he can get away. He's very cagey. He's armed. So the game between them both is, can they get him in that perimeter? Can somebody spot him, a citizen or an officer, and then just ramp up where you can get on him really fast? That's how you would catch him. His game is he needs to slip that perimeter on foot, because if he gets to somebody in a vehicle or gets in a vehicle, the roadblocks will catch him in the perimeter. So likely he's smart enough to know this. He's going to try to slip that perimeter on foot in the night, and then he wants to get a car, carjack someone, shoot someone, get their keys, get the car, and get a few hours away before that crime is discovered. And that's what he no doubt is trying to do, and head south for the border.
So yesterday, when we got all these updates in this press conference, police were questioned. They took a lot of questions, but there was some focus on the challenges they faced with capturing the suspect. I want to play a little bit of what Lieutenant Colonel George Bibbins had to say and talk on the other side.
Our law enforcement people have done an amazing job tracking him and locating him, that proverbial needle in the haystack, and they've located that needle repeatedly. Our people have done an amazing job. I'm very proud of the work that they have done and continue to do. Nothing has gone wrong. Our agencies are all working very well together, and I believe we will be successful in the long run.
So what struck me yesterday as Joe and I were watching this live is, this is a convicted killer who's been on the run now since August 31st. I mean, what are your thoughts on that comment there? Has nothing gone wrong?
Well, I've been in this commander's shoes before. I mean, I've chased cop killers with cordons of 400 troopers and agents around similar terrain, and I remember one who slipped through our cordon and carjacked someone and got away. Because look, this guy can slip out of a prison with walls and guard towers and razor wire, and he did it the same way that a guy did it back in May. I mean, that's the heavy criticism in this case, I think, belongs there. This guy escaped the same way an inmate escaped in May from the same prison. Mm-hmm. Officers can only be so many places at so many, moments, and they're challenged by physics and geography and terrain, and this guy's very cagey. So they need a break, but they're leveraging the public on their side. Mm-hmm. They're doing a good job on communication because they need all the eyes of the citizens to say, I just saw the guy run through my yard. My camera picked him up. He was behind my house. And then they can swarm that area and maybe flush him out. That's what they've got to do now.
All right, Jim Kavanaugh, as always, we appreciate your expertise. Thank you so much.
5 former Memphis police officers are now facing federal charges. They're accused of civil rights violations in the beating death of Tyre Nichols. Yesterday, the Justice Department announced the 4-count indictment against the former officers. They were already facing state charges of second-degree murder and other alleged offenses. They've all pleaded not guilty to those charges. Nichols was violently beaten during a January traffic stop near his home. The 29-year-old died 3 days later. Announcing the indictments, Kristen Clark, who leads the DOJ's Civil Rights Division, said no one is above the law.
When some officers violate the Constitution, when they use excessive force, when they ignore serious injuries inflicted on people they arrest, their actions erode the public's trust.
NBC News Justice and Intelligence Correspondent Kendallanian joins us now. So, Ken, first of all, just walk us through what's included in this federal indictment.
Good morning, Joe. This case was notable because videos of this horrific beating were released to the public. And Attorney General Merrick Garland said yesterday that the country watched in horror as Tyre Nichols was kicked, punched, tased and pepper sprayed. And he said, we all heard Mr. Nichols cry out for his mother and say, I'm just trying to go home. So these 5 officers have been fired. They're in custody. They've been charged with murder in state court. Yesterday, the federal government, the Justice Department, indicted them on a Civil War era statute, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, and related charges, a 4-count indictment that accuses them of violating Mr. Nichols' civil rights by beating him to death and also by failing to render medical aid, and it accuses them of conspiring to obstruct justice and tamper with witnesses. Now, the state charges against these officers carry a penalty of 25 years in prison. These federal charges carry a penalty of up to life in prison. So both the state and the federal governments have 2 cracks now at these officers who have pleaded not guilty in state court, Joe.
So, Ken, any reaction from the attorneys of the former officers, anything from the police department?
The attorneys have said that they expected this development and that they are prepared to defend themselves. The police department we haven't heard from. They are under investigation separately by the Justice Department in what's known as a pattern and practice civil rights investigation to see if there are issues beyond these 5 officers with the way Memphis is policing. And that is a process that will go on for a long time. And it's happening in many, many major American cities, Joe.
So let's talk about what comes next after this federal indictment. What's next in the process?
Well, look, both the federal and the state cases will go through, the usual procedures in court. For example, in the state case, the police officers are trying to separate their trials so they aren't tried separately. The federal case will take a year or more to go to trial. It'll be interesting to see which one goes to trial first, most likely the state case. But again, what's important for prosecutors is if something goes wrong in either of these cases, then they have the other one to make sure that they bring justice to Tyree Nichols' family.
All right. Kendallanian. Ken, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.